Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of
Sip and share. Sip and share. Let's go.
I'm going to start with you today.
Starting with me.
I'm going to stop with you today.
Stop with me. Oh, you're going to stop right on time.
I behaved today.
Good.
I behaved.
Oh.
So what are we drinking on, babe? You fixed the drink, so what is in our cups?
We are drinking on some high quality H2O.
Oh.
Straight up water. Staying hydrated. Staying clean.
Water. 64 ounces a day, right? 64?
Yeah, it's supposed to be 64.
64 a day. Unless you increase your activity, then increase your water, right?
Our bodies are made up of mostly water, so we have to stay hydrated. It is very, very important. Very important.
Just some useless knowledge.
Useless knowledge.
Or useful.
It's very useful knowledge, actually.
So today we are talking about a very serious subject. You want to tell everybody what we're discussing, babe?
Yeah, as we approach the remembrance of the events that happened on September 11th, World Trade Center, United Airlines Flight 93, Pentagon, all the folks that lost their lives. Kind of want to just take a second to just pause and think about the events that occurred and everything that happened. I think most people out there can probably remember it like it happened yesterday. The ironic thing about it is it happened so long ago and we don't even realize it, how quickly time passes. But do you happen to recall where you were when the events took place?
Yeah, so I was in my first year of teaching. So, that means like 2 months worth of not even 2 months yet worth of teaching under my belt. I was in my third grade classroom at Norris Elementary, and I just recall like this solemn mood. I was teaching at the time. I don't know if my door was open or if a teacher just came by, and they were like, turn on your TV, and so then we saw things happening, and then I turned everything off because, like I said, I was young. I didn't really know like what to say or do with things, but I just remember there was something. It just made it feel like I had never been through this, right?
Yeah. And
it got more real as I left the school, so I tried to keep it as normal as possible for the kids. Like, okay, well, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. And I was going to make sense of it myself first. So when I started to leave and then the radio was silent of music and it was just them talking about the what was going on and everything just seemed to have just went bam, shut down. Though it was New York, it just seemed like the whole world was dark to me. It was quiet.
Yep.
It was solemn. It was serious. It was just, God, it's just, I don't know. I'm trying to put it in words, but it was just, it was so unreal. Yeah. So unreal.
The city of New York represents, in some ways, it represents America in a lot of ways. Yeah. When we have things like that happen on our own turf, it actually sets that mood over the entire world, and it spreads very fast and very quickly. I can remember I had recently, not too long before that, separated from the United States Marine Corps, and we were all living back home in my hometown for a short period of time, and I actually was working at a finance company at the time. And when the details of the events started to unfold, I think at first I really didn't understand the gravity of it. As I sit and think back about it, when it first happened, I didn't understand the gravity of it at the time, because initially when I thought about it, I remember that there had been previous attacks on the World Trade Center and things like that had happened before, but not at that level. Definitely not at that level. So when we initially heard about it, I can't remember if it was on the radio or whatever it was. We were just like, oh man, something happened to the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, as the minutes started to pass by, the situation worsened, and we got more details, and I think for me and where I was sitting, the sadness and the sorrow started to set a little on a slower basis, and then all of a sudden it just increased when we found out what really happened.
Yeah.
And I think when the second plane hit, that's when it really set in, and everyone was kind of like, oh gosh, this is a lot worse than we thought. Shortly after that, I think my district manager or something took me to lunch, and we started talking about it a lot more into detail. And I just remember at that point, as you mentioned, having that sinking feeling, that pressure in your chest, like, man, this is bad, because you hear about attacks like that, or you see them on television in other countries and things like that. But something to happen on your own home turf like that, of that scale, it was something that I don't think anyone really had fathom could happen or even imagine could happen at any point.
Yeah, and you brought up something for me, and I think the way you described it, about it was like a slow progression of sorrow, sadness, solemnness, but you knew something. There was this aura of darkness surrounding.
Right.
And like I said, just turning on. I remember just turning on that radio, and it was like,
yeah,
and you just heard them talking, and I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
And when we got home and we could start watching more and seeing further and further attacks, not only the towers but the Pentagon.
Right.
It was like, oh my goodness, we're one of those countries that is about to be attacked.
Yeah.
And so fear set in.
Yep.
Like, what are we about to do? Like, though this was miles and miles, New York and Georgia are way apart. Washington, D.C., Arlington area is way apart from Georgia. But it was like it was in your backyard.
Yep. There was a lot of unity and togetherness that instantly took place.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, the geographical separation between Georgia and New York is vast, but instantaneously, I felt like all over the entire nation, there was some unity that occurred, and we all kind of forgot the differences and the disagreements that we might have been experiencing at that time. And I think there was a bond that formed together across the entire nation, and everybody's heart was in sync, because you had, the first tower, then the second tower, then you heard about the Pentagon, then you heard about Flight 93, and you just didn't know at that time what's next. Is there something else? And then all the planes are being grounded, all that good stuff. And it was quite scary, to be honest.
Yeah.
It was quite scary at that moment. And I was out being out of the military at that time, and I was already kind of on the fence about, hey, should I go back in? I was already kind of leaning towards that direction. I hadn't even been out a year yet, and I was already leaning towards that direction. But I'll tell you, when that happened, I have to believe that really kind of pushed me over to say, it solidified. It's like I need to go back and serve my country at that point.
Yeah. And I think all of us in some form or fashion wanted to serve. We wanted to comfort. We wanted to provide whatever was necessary to protect and form a barrier around the hearts of all people of the United States, right? I just remember seeing the ash and people, things like that. And like I said, it made me feel for the first time like a third world type country. But I love the fact that we all came together.
Yeah.
I love the fact that it didn't matter the color of your skin. It didn't matter what language you spoke. It didn't matter what gender, what was your sexual orientation. It didn't matter about anything.
Right.
It showed me that we were truly a United States. And I just continue from this day forward to pray for all the families. Though we experienced it externally, and our hearts were broken by everything going on, there are so many families out there that the experience touched far too close.
For sure.
Too close to home. And husbands, wives, daughters,
Yep.
sons were lost.
It would not take much effort to find someone that is still probably suffering from the things that happened way back then. Somebody was impacted. Somebody received a
Yeah.
call. Somebody put up a flyer or a sign looking for their loved one who didn't come home. Cell phones could not be reached. The survivors, the kids that were little at that time or well in their 20s at this point, who were fortunate enough to survive. And you would not have any difficulty finding someone who is still feeling the negative impacts of what happened back then today. So from my perspective, obviously lots of unnecessary loss of life occurred during that time. For the folks that were obviously in the World Trade Center, Pentagon at that time, or Flight 93 at that time, then you had the folks that were trying to get in, and the brave men and women that were trying to save the firemen, the paramedics, the policemen, just the innocent bystanders who heard about it, people that came from other states, folks
the
that
heroes
were
within the
heroes
towers.
within the towers. Yeah, very valid point, because even though they were within a building that was being attacked, there were leaders that came through.
Yeah.
Even in the chaos, it won't take much to Google and look at the story of Flight 93 and how they all formed together to, try to ensure that next plane didn't make it to DC like like the other ones did. So tons of heroes out there. And so we just can't forget about those folks some of them are still here with us today, and just have to kind of keep that into our thoughts for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's it for today, guys. As we draw near that particular day, the day of 9/11, we just ask you all to continue to pray for everyone that experienced it, pray for our country, and just let's be united.
Absolutely.
Even beyond when it calls for.
Right.
Let's be united. Yes, let's be kind to one another. Let's pray for one another. Let's give each other some grace.
And before we close out, I do want to just take 10 seconds to have a moment of silence for everyone that lost their lives during those tragic events.
And we'll see you guys on next week for another episode of Sip
And share.